Okay, 5 seconds from now.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Wesley Sykes, and I'm the managing editor of Coach and Athletic Director magazine. Today's virtual coaching roundtable on finding new revenue streams is brought to us by Samsung. Our panelists include Brandon Spaeth, Assistant Athletic Director at Roger Bacon High School in Cincinnati, Ohio, Scott Jarvis, Director of Athletics at Ankeny Centennial High School in Ankeny, Iowa, Matthew Trahan, Director of Athletics at Old Colony Regional Vocational High School in Rochester, Massachusetts, and Peter Goff, Athletic Director at DeKalb High School in DeKalb, Illinois. Brandon finished his 5th year at Roger Bacon, his alma mater, and graduated with a Bachelor of Science and Master's degree in Sports Administration from the University of Cincinnati. In 2018, Brandon obtained his CAA, and his major areas of focus include content creation, social media, and sponsorships in interscholastic athletics. He has long-term goals of working in college athletics administration. Scott holds 2 master's degrees in educational leadership and sports management from Drake University and is certified by the National Interscholastic Athletics Association as a certified master athletic administrator. He's been recognized as a National Athletic Director of the Year finalist from the National High School Athletic Coaches Association and the Bruce Whitehead Distinguished Service Award winner from the NIAAA. Scott is a leader in the sports industry for athletic administrators across the country with his ideas on athletic leadership. Matt has been in his position at Old Colony for the past 16 years. He's earned his bachelor's degree in business administration from Newburyport College. He is also a certified athletic administrator through the NIAAA. Matt has been recognized with a number of awards for his accomplishments, including being named the MSSADA 2018-19 Massachusetts Athletic Director of the Year. And at the national level, Matt has been a state delegate and a state awards representative. Throughout his professional career, Matt has made a commitment to the success of student athletes at Old Colony through the formation of the Captain's Council and the Cougar Community Service Group. Peter graduated with a bachelor's degree in sports communication from Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. He's also completed 2 master's programs in curriculum and instruction from Northern Illinois University and educational leadership from National Louis University. Peter has been recognized with the Illinois Boys Basketball Coaches Association District Coach of the Year. He's additionally been named the Athletic Director of the Year by the Illinois Wrestling Coaches Association. At DeKalb High School, he has helped spearhead a $300,000 scoreboard facility renovation project with the help of the DeKalb High School Sports Boosters. Now, we do have a quick poll question so we can help better understand who is here with us today. So please take a moment to answer that on your screen. And just a couple of housekeeping notes before we move forward with our roundtable discussion. This will be available on demand in the coming days, and you should look out for an email that will detail how to access the recording in the near future. Feel free to utilize the Q&A feature along the bottom panel of your screen to submit any questions you have while our panelists are speaking. And with that said, let's get started. Let's kick things off here. This should be a lot of fun for everybody. So let's get started with our first question. We'll hand things off to Peter first. What are some of the most successful out-of-the-box fundraising efforts you've ever coordinated? And as a follow-up, what made those efforts successful?
Well, probably the biggest thing, first of all, I'd like to thank the coaches AD and Samsung for inviting us to do this. This should hopefully is helpful, and it's extremely exciting to do this. One of the biggest out-of-the-box things that I did one time is that we sold mattresses at my former school. I think we made $6,500 in 2 days, and I didn't do a thing but just welcome people to come in. I was like the coach off the Bad News Bears when he said hi and bye to everybody and picking training. So I think Scott would like that reference in baseball, but that was probably the easiest, and everyone needs a bed. And so they sold pillows. My wife bought a couple pillows. It's unbelievable the technology they have in there. And a lot of people really enjoyed that. I know the year after I left, they did it again, didn't make as much money, but they still made some money. So that's probably one of the biggest out of the boxes that I've ever done.
And Matt, how about some of your efforts out in Massachusetts?
So outside the box, Wes, before I get to that, I just want to thank
you, Samsung, and Coach and AD Magazine for having me. Extremely excited and feel very privileged to be here with you today. Outside the box, we've done something. We started it about 15 years ago, and it's over the top talent show. So what it does is it showcases the talents of many of our students at the school, and really we've gotten some of the area and local businesses around it where they're providing tuxedos and dresses and flowers and whatnot for the contestants. But ultimately, what it does for us is it brings the entire school community together. So it's a wonderful thing. It creates memories. It generates funds for athletics, but ultimately it brings your school together. And for us, it's generated anywhere between $6,000 to $10,000 a year. And that's one night. It's a one-night event. Everybody loves it, and it's the feature in our school yearbook.
That's fantastic. And let's head over to Iowa for Scott. What are some things you're doing out in Iowa in the Hawkeye State?
Well, we've done a couple of things throughout my career. One of them is we used to do online music sales. So we used Pass Along Networks, which was a couple of years back, which I thought was a really neat idea. So it was basically iTunes, and we got a percentage of the sale. We also actually sold a product for Breathe Clean, which was the UV light things that people entered into their HVAC units at home that cleaned the air in the houses, and we got a kickback. We ended up making about 10 or 12 grand off of that. We also did a Tommy Lasorda. Everybody's an old Dodgers fan. We actually had Tommy Lasorda come speak while I was out in Seattle, Washington, and we raised about $400,000 in one night. We did a benefit dinner for our athletic facilities, and we put in a new baseball field. So that was a huge one for us. And then the other thing we've done is just try to incorporate some fan engagement with some apps and some different social media that has been very profitable also.
All right. Thank you, Scott. And let's check into the Buckeye State. Do I have that right, Brandon?
Right. Cincinnati, Ohio.
So yeah, so what are some things, some out of the box fundraising efforts that have you've helped coordinate or been a part of at Roger Bacon?
Right. So first, like everybody else said, definitely want to thank Coach and AD Magazine and Samsung for making this possible. Really appreciate these old guys too, letting a young guy like myself hop on board and share my insights. But no, we've heard of the mattress sales. Another one big in Cincinnati is mulch sales. I've never been a part of that, but one we did recently. It actually just ended. Our cheerleading coach, she set up the whole thing. They sold buckets of popcorn for $20 a bucket. And I think they sold $10,000 worth of popcorn to families and friends. And I believe they get 50 to 60% of that. So that was something nice and easy that, we really, the athletic department, me and my boss, Steve Ross, I had our hands off, and, they went out, promoted it on social media, through emails and all that stuff. So recently that's kind of been one of the craziest, most out of the box ways to raise some money.
Fantastic. And we've all heard the cliche, when life hands you lemons, let's make some lemonade here. Let's talk about some learning experiences. So tell me something that didn't go as planned and how you were able to apply those learning experiences to future fundraising efforts. Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
I think, you always get thrown curveballs in fundraising all the time. And, mine have all revolved around the event-based. We did a Christmas in the gym while I was in Newton. And about 20 minutes before game time, the teams are showing up, and my principal came in and said, "Hey, we're canceled." So we always trying to find different ways. We do a cake auction currently at Ankeny Centennial, and we raised about $7,500. So we had about 100 cakes show up this year at our gym for a game that got canceled. So we quickly mobilized and put our cakes online, social media, tried to blitz that out as much as possible, and really did really well actually for not having the event, but utilized some online auction services and kind of did it last second, and it ended up going really well, and we made some decent money. Instead of letting 100 cakes go to waste, we made the best of it and really utilized social media and some online auction platforms also.
Let them eat cake. I love it. So Brandon, how about yourself? Has there been any experiences that haven't gone as planned, and how have you learned and moved on from that in the future?
Yeah, so when I first started, we used to do this blacktop party. It would be a steak fry, corn on the cob, mashed potato, all that good stuff. And back in the day, I mean, Roger Bacon's been around since 1928. I mean, they used to have to rent out parks to do it. It would bring in, probably tens and thousands of dollars. I think it was my second year we stopped doing it because, the athletic director and myself would set up this whole thing. And, we made, I think, like $900 the whole time. It was a week long effort. We had to run and go get hay bales and heaters and all this and whatnot. And we kind of came together and decided that instead of spending all that time for this blacktop party, that it's lost its appeal. Let's spend that time trying to get some new sponsors, or have a new event. Spend that time elsewhere.
And Peter, how about yourself? Any learning experiences you'd like to share?
Well, one was the mattress sale that I had here at DeKalb. I did it during our Christmas. We run a 32-team wrestling and a 16-team varsity boys basketball tournament at the same time, but we do it right after Christmas. And we tried it then, and it didn't go over well. And I kind of thought about, well, right after Christmas, it's hard to make that type of commitment. So I have put that into my memory bank to do it at the beginning of the year when everyone's fresh and ready and ready to go then. So that would probably be my biggest learning thing through that, is to kind of watch what you do during those Christmas things, because you're always trying to, run 50-50s and things like that. But I like that cake sale. I wrote that down for.
Yeah, and I know Matt's had some experiences with some mattress fundraising, but anything that you've learned over your time and how to apply that in future fundraising events.
Sure. So a funny story in reference to the talent show. At one.
Oh, it looks like Matthew froze up for us in a moment. Hopefully we can get him back. But I believe he was talking about that talent show. I think it's Mr. Old Colony, Mr. Cougar that they do there.
School.
Oh,
I'm back.
Oh, you're back. Okay, great. Sorry, you froze up on us there. That's what happens when we're doing it live here, right? So I think you cut off just at the start of your answer.
Sure, and I apologize for that. So again, referencing that that talent show, we had about 600-700 people in the gym one night, and about 15 minutes into the production, the lights just cut out on us. So you can imagine sweating bullets. Long story short, thankfully we're a vocational school, and the head electrician happened to be there. So we learned from our mistake. We won't plug everything into every receptacle.
Yeah. And it's a good learning experience for the students who are in the vocational trade too at that point too, right? On the job training. And
you say, make light, lemons out of a tough situation. 700 people turned their phones on, and it was a singing contest. So everybody had a great time. It was still quality.
That's fantastic. And how do you go about presenting or marketing your product, which in this case would be your school, in order to get investments and sponsorships from businesses in your community? Brandon, I'll toss it to you first.
Yeah, so I mean, we do a really good job of marketing, especially on social media. I think that's important. We have a great relationship. Our local media is phenomenal. They love Roger Bacon. We love them. They help promote all the good stuff going on at Roger Bacon. Even the stuff that makes Roger Bacon so great, it's our students. We promote our students more than anything. We have some nice facilities, and we made some major upgrades. But the product at Roger Bacon is our students. So we try to get their names, their stories out there as much as we can. And I think when business owners or people see that in the magazine, I think that they want to be associated with Roger Bacon when that stuff kind of gets promoted.
And Peter, do you have some experience with marketing the barbs? Oh, we're going to ask you to unmute yourself, Peter. I apologize for that.
I always forget to do that. What we do is that, we're very proud. We have great facilities here. And like you said, one of the things that's unique about our high school is that there's only one barb nickname throughout the whole United States. So we talk about one barb and having the pride of barbed wire being invented here in DeKalb, Illinois. And we live about 3 minutes outside of suburbs, and we're probably 45 minutes to an hour from downtown Chicago. And what we do is that, we just went over, like I said in my intro, We had $300,000 with the scoreboard that we put in the gym. You'll see pictures later and one outside. And what we kind of talk to our partners, we talk about our business, is just about the visibility, promote sportsmanship, drive retail, dealer traffic. We have new people coming out from Naperville, Illinois, and Aurora with the schools in the DuPage Valley Conference to promote their business, places where they can stop out, grab a bite to eat before games and things like that. And another thing that we do, we give kind of 5 top reasons on why you should go ahead and do some sponsorship with high schools. One being that 91% more adults have 2 or more kids. It's 30 consecutive increased participation since 1989, they said. 96% of the consumers say they have a more positive image of your company if you are sponsoring something at the high school. 94% of the consumers say they would be more likely to trust that company as well. And then 91% of the consumers say that they will switch brands if you are sponsoring stuff at high school. So that's, we kind of really look at the marketing aspect and get down to where it goes is money. So that's what we kind of promote here with our sponsorships is that type of data.
And thank you very much. And Matt, how about at Old Colony? How do you best market the Cougars to your region?
So for us, just a little background. I mean, we're a smaller vocational school in a rural area, and really, for anybody that's ever been there, I think they understand that it's very family oriented and family driven. So for us, I think the benefit of being small is that we are in tune with one another. Like Brandon said, we are very active on social media, websites, constantly putting out newsletters to the parents, and they're very, very receptive. So, in turn, being a vocational school, a lot of those parents and or relatives own businesses themselves. So they're extremely helpful, and we can't thank them enough for all they do for Old Colony.
And to wrap up our third question here, Scott, let's throw it to you.
I would have to just echo what Brandon said. I mean, our product is our student athletes and how important it is for us to promote them, promote our programs. At the end of the day, everything we do is for our kids. We try to, publicize them. We use social media a lot to, whether it's where they're signing. We do Athlete of the Week. We get sponsorships for that. We get sponsorships for different tournaments, which I know a lot of the ADs are on here already do. We even worked with a local car dealership. While I was in Newton, we actually gave away a car at one of our basketball games, and we used that as a promotional to create some excitement around our basketball season, and then just get people to the game because we made it mandatory to be in attendance to win the car. So we had a packed gym that night. And then I would just lastly, just say one of the things that I've found that's been really important for us is to really get involved with our local business groups and really try to get out and speak at local civic organizations and try to, make as many touches out in the community. And whether that's bringing student athletes with us to try to highlight them and try to show the great things that they're doing, but also just make sure we're getting involved with our Chamber of Commerce with different events that they host. And a lot of times what our chamber will do is they'll hire groups of our students to come help with different events for them too, which it kind of is twofold for us. It gets our story out to everyone, and also we pick up some benefits from working with our chamber also.
Absolutely. Thank you. And there's little doubt that the stronger a relationship with, your boosters, your parents, your local businesses, et cetera, the easier it can be to raise funds. I don't think I'm making any groundbreaking statement by saying that, but it's the old adage, right? It takes a village. I'm a big fan of cliches, if you haven't noticed. So how have you found the best ways to approach, the boosters, the parents, the local businesses in helping to raise funds? And Peter, we'll start with you if you don't mind.
Well, what we have here is that we have the thing about booster clubs is that some people don't like to get involved, but we're really trying to expand that. And our booster club, I kind of came with that idea, my first year, said, hey, here's something to think about, so that we can start generating some money. And, we took that whole year to kind of assess what we could do. I kept showing them things that we're able, and you'll see in the PowerPoint that I have. But the booster clubs did a great job of jumping on board, diving in and say, hey, let's get this done. We put a plan together. We're going to have it paid off in less than a year with all of what we have. And they just really bought into it. And I think that this shows that they had a lot of our pride, and they wanted to. I mean, we have an 8-year-old building, and to come up and if you show me someone who's satisfied, I'll show you a failure. That's the old MASH reference that I use all the time, is that always strive to do better and always leave somewhere when you found it, leave it better when you left. And that's what a lot of the booster clubs, because they recycle, because when their kid gets out, they leave. So that's one thing that we really talked about, and the boosters, our sports boosters, did an absolute outstanding job along with our administration backing us on this project, and we've had nothing but great reviews about it.
All right. Thank you, Peter. And Scott, in your experience, what have been your relationships like working with parents, boosters, local companies?
Obviously, it becomes more and more evident as ADs throughout the country that we need that parental support. Colleges, same thing. Their boosters are a huge part of what they do. And I think for me, it's just being honest, with them, open and honest with our booster club about our needs. And I think the big thing too is and Peter already alluded to it already, but having a plan is huge. Whenever you go into a fundraising event, it's super important that people know what you need and how much it costs. When we did our athletic benefit dinner, people did not realize how much money was spent. So I basically had all of our coaches say, all right, hey, I'm just going to work with you on our budget, but then we're going to show at our athletic benefit dinner what it actually costs to run football, what it actually costs to run softball. And people were blown away. And I think the other thing is that parents need to understand, and boosters is what really your school provides. Like our school district in Iowa, our school district provides money for coaches' salaries and transportation. Everything else is generated by our athletic department. So I don't know that enough parents know that. So making sure that you share that message with them about how money is allocated is really important.
Thank you very much. And Matt, you're in a little bit of a unique position, right? Where, as you mentioned, being in a vocational school with so many parents operating businesses that could actually, that are actually teaching those type of vocations within the school already. So I would imagine those relationships that you have with parents and local companies are pretty strong and something you lean on a lot.
Absolutely. I mean, and you know what? It's a happy marriage because I think it ties in with the school model, being a vocational school, as you mentioned. But I couldn't agree more with Scott and what he referenced. I mean, you need to be honest and you need to be upfront with the parents and let them know what does the school provide. I'm very similar to him and as far as transportation and coaches' salary. So, if there's something additional that we want or we need, there's a clear message as to how we need to get there and what we need to do to make that happen. I've had nothing but great success, so much so that we've had some folks that have stayed on even past their son or daughter's graduation because they've fallen in love with the group. And really, I think you need to make yourself available. I have an open door policy, to parents, whomever. And really, I think you need to let them know, like, hey, no question's a bad question. If it's something that we can do to serve our kids, we'll certainly do it.
And Brandon, there to put a bow on the question, how do you form relationships with boosters, parents, local businesses in order to increase funds?
Yeah, so I mean, we probably have a different booster outlook than everybody else does. Ours is really small. It's pretty much all of our concession sales, but all of that, our booster account, it funds team uniforms and, some, huddle and all that good stuff. We have had parents that are concerned about, how the money's being spent. Why does this team get more than this team? We're always open and honest with them. For instance, we had a girls basketball parent that was upset about the boys basketball team got new uniforms 2 years in a row. And, why did the athletic department buy them that? And, it was the fact that they had a summer camp and they raised X amount of dollars. And, those teams are free to do with their money whatever they want. So if they raise X amount of dollars, they can spend it on whatever it is. And then, to maintain the, with the local businesses and stuff, we don't just want them to give us a check and then that's it. We make it, known and clear that, we appreciate how, the funds that they give us and all the opportunities they provide our student athletes. Every year we write thank you cards. My dad always taught me, writing a thank you letter is one of the best things you can do. So every year we do that. Just a nice little touch at the end, like, hey, we don't just want your money. We appreciate the relationship that we've built with these local businesses.
Fantastic. And let's move on to our next question here, which I'm sure is a favorite topic of conversation for many athletic administrators across the country. Let's talk about being state and grant fund savvy here. So do you have any advice for administrators on how to figure out if they qualify for state and or federally funded grants, and maybe some experiences that you have of, rifling through the paperwork and going through the process of trying to get, state or federally approved funds? Matt, I'll start with you.
Well, I hate to admit it, but I don't have a whole heck of a lot of experience. I do know that if you are fortunate enough to have a grant writer at your school, you should kiss their feet, because they are worth their weight in gold. We had one at one time. She was tremendous, and definitely helped the school with technology and so on and so forth. Unfortunately for us, we didn't fit the criteria that we needed to obtain any athletic grants. But again, she was wonderful, and she's irreplaceable.
Yeah, and I know Scott was someone who did mention prior that he has experience writing some grants and experience going through that process and being on the receiving end of both good and bad news, right? So maybe take us through some of those examples, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so one of the grants I wrote, I actually printed it out, so I'd have a little bit of just a cheat sheet here, but I mean, sometimes it can be a pretty lengthy process. So I know I'm just going to reiterate what Matt said, having someone who is a grant writer for your school is huge. If you have that, it's a huge benefit to you. And I'm just an old hack, so the information I put together might not have been, but this is about a 7-page document that we had to type up and submit, and we did not get the grant. So I guess it all comes down to how much time as an AD you have to spend on writing that grant, and if it's worth your time. So, and I think too, having grant writer is important, but we've also written some grants. There was one when I was in Minnesota, when I was up in Minneapolis area, that we wrote, Toyota had a grant available, and we wrote a grant for them, and we were awarded $10,000. So, at the end of the day, it's a lot of extra work, and sometimes it yields fruit and sometimes it doesn't. So again, if you have somebody, even if you're reaching out to your booster club or people within your community to have an experience with that, I mean, there are definitely people that you want to bring on board and try to love them up and get them involved within your boosters or your school in some way.
Yeah, and Peter, I think you might be in the same boat as Matt here. Maybe not having as much experience for it, but I think is it a mindset of you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, or is it worth having no stone left unturned when it comes to grant funds?
Well, I believe that there, especially in the state of Illinois, there's a lot more money that needs to go to a higher purpose than us to have the scoreboards and things like that. Everything that we raised was through the Booster Club. I just feel that those type of things, if you can find a grant that is going to work for younger levels to try to make things better, then yes, that's what it's specifically for. But I wouldn't want to take anything away from something that was, not important, but that would go for a better cause. I always say, if you listen to Mike Matos, he always said there's things that you need to know and things that you have to know. I think that things that, do we have to have those boards? No, but it's going to help in the long run take some ease off the taxpayers through things that we don't have to, charge as high as participation fees, as a question I saw on there.
Right.
So, but I think I'd rather give the things that you have to have than things that you don't really need to have.
And now, Brandon, if I'm reading this correctly, right, there are some team members over at Roger Bacon involved that have experience with going through state and federally funded grants.
Yeah, so again, we're under about 500 students here at Roger Bacon, and all the grant writing and all that stuff. I think 2 years ago we brought in a guy, his name's Tom Bill. He's a retired principal, so he kind of gets the high school atmosphere kind of vibe and all that good stuff, and he knows a lot of people. But he's a part-time employee for our school, and his job is strictly to help write grants. But like you said, us as the athletic department, we kind of just serve as a middleman in terms of, hey, giving them, our grant writer and then also our president, facts, how many student athletes use the field in a given year, how many youth teams do we have on the basketball court, all that kind of stuff. So we, like I said, we really just serve as kind of, they ask for it and we give it to them.
Absolutely. And going on to our next question, how do you involve athletic programs, student body, community into this process, if you do at all? Is it something that you want the students maybe going door to door, or you want to move away from that perspective? And Peter, I'll throw it off to you first.
Well, that's the one thing that we are trying to stop here, is having the kids go door to door. Like I said in our live chat yesterday, spring season comes, you head for the hills, because here comes all the different teams with their with the things that they're trying to sell. We tried to limit it to per team or down to one, and let them do as many as they want if they go out and work. Like if they're going to go out and do, like paint signs like I've done before for somebody, as long as they're working, or they set up those times like to go to Chipotle and you get 10% donate back to your program. Those things are great. But with the scoreboards and with the advertising that we've done through the Booster Club and us, this is hopefully going to take that away, so there's not that pressure on our students or our student athletes' parents. Oh, we've got to sell these, these cards, or we got to sell the fudge and all that stuff. So I've got a couple great ideas. I like the mulch shell sales, just to try to start thinking outside the box, so the kids don't have to do a brunt of that.
And Matt, I believe you have some experience there. I think you had mentioned the gold cards, right? For example.
Yes, but before I get to that, I love his thought, because I would love to get away from the door to door as well. But in the community that I'm in, that it's kind of a necessity. So Gold Athletics, they do a tremendous job for us. They work with just about every team, and we do different fundraisers. But specifically the Gold card, which is nice. It has a number of different packages on there that you can, you would sell to a parent or a relative or whatnot, and there's all kinds of discounts in relation to the local businesses and some of the folks that support Old Colony. So, if, for instance, our football team, I think last year made roughly $10,000 in a 2-day span. And we work with a gentleman by the name of Matt Ross for Gold Athletics. I know he has kind of spearheaded things for us. He's up and down the Eastern Seaboard. He does a tremendous job, and we can't thank him enough for helping us run our programs and run them effectively.
Yeah, and thank you. And Brandon, I know you had mentioned, much like Scott did, as your student body is your product, right? That's kind of what you're putting forth to a lot of advertisers. Does that play into the same role with this question at all?
Yeah, I mean, like Peter said, we try to limit the, door-to-door sales. I think, like previously mentioned, the popcorn sale, I think one of the reasons why that was so successful is that, we didn't have 18 teams, going and trying to sell candy bars, mulch, whatever you want to call it. So, I think, maybe 1 or 2 of those a year isn't a big deal. But I think us shrinking it and limiting it down to, maybe 1 or 2 a year, I think that helped, in this instance, the popcorn sale tremendously. When it comes to involving student athletes and all that stuff, with our sponsors and our advertisers, a lot of our kids work at, like for instance, with BWR, Buffalo Wings and Rings, they're a proud sponsor of Roger Bacon. You go to their, one of their locations, you can't look 3 inches without seeing a Roger Bacon Spartan in there. So, not only do they, help us with funds, but they also help our kids, enter the workforce and, raise money for themselves.
Mm-hmm. And Scott, to finish off the question, your experience with student organizations being involved in the process.
Yeah, I think, we do some email campaigns, and we've actually, I know there's some companies out there that do that. We actually developed something on our own so we could kind of retain more of the money. So we've got a lot of our teams that do email campaigns, which I know a lot of colleges do those, which have been very beneficial. So our kids are sending out text messages and emails to aunts, uncles, grandmas and grandpas, people from out of state. So we're not always hitting our local people all the time, which I think is great. Another thing that I think as high school ADs, we need to do a better job of is trying to reach out to our alumni. I think that's one organization that we can really go out and try to, hit up for some money. And one thing that we did while I was at Newton was we started our Hall of Fame, and it made a huge impact on what we were receiving from some of our alumni. So we're bringing people back, not only just great athletes, but, we had famous scientists, famous jazz singers that we were bringing back. We had a gentleman that worked for NASA, and we were starting our robotics program, and he's like, hey, what do you need? He just ended up paying for everything we needed for our robotics team for each year. So I think there's definitely some ways that we can, as ADs, reach out and try to pull back some of our alumni and people from outside of our normal fold that can help, our kids, because there's other people out there in the country that support of our student athletes. I think that's evident even with, doing online streaming we have for some of our games, and we've got people watching, and we're just little Iowa, people from Arizona, out in New York, Boston, that are watching our football games because there's just relatives, aunts, uncles, grandpas, grandmas, cousins, brothers and sisters that are out at school, that
Right.
want to be drugged back in and experience the excitement of high school athletics.
Yeah, and that sounds fantastic. And we do have a question from the audience here that I think kind of ties into what we were just talking about. This is from Darren. What advice do you have for athletic directors of schools with small enrollment numbers? So he gives the example of 200 students total for grades 9 through 12 who do not have their own facilities. I think some of our answers kind of touched on this, a little bit without having to, add or maybe sell out your facilities. But do you have any advice for Darren, maybe from the perspective of Matt or Brandon, who are a little bit closer to that 200 number?
Yeah, I mean, Matt, I'll go first. That's definitely something I've never been, we haven't had the experience at, but, I think with that comes into play, you just got to get creative. I would definitely recommend reaching out to other ADs, especially ones with schools like like their own sizes. And, one idea that comes off the top of my mind is, we share a baseball field, newly built, which we obviously didn't get to use this spring, which is unfortunate. Mm-hmm. But, the local public school, St. Bernard, uses the same field. And, back when it was starting to be built, we were talking about, sharing, sponsorship. So, if company XYZ wants to put a banner up at Ross Park, okay, well, it's not only going to benefit Roger Bacon, but it'll also benefit St. Bernard as well. So, if they give us $500 to put a banner up, okay, you know what, since Roger Bacon isn't the only one that plays there, the Titans play there as well. Okay, let's split that 500 and, each school gets $250 and then, life is good.
Yeah, and Matt, again, I think when you talk about these smaller schools, with the 200 people, like Darren mentioned, I think community building, again, having those strong relationships within the community are exclusively or especially important.
Absolutely. I mean, my mind takes me to, and you would know the school, Pope John Paul down the Cape.
Sure.
They have a great relationship with Mass Maritime Academy for quite a number of sports. If you could reach out and hopefully there's a college, relatively close, or like you had mentioned, the community building, there's a number of different things that you can do. I know so much so that, when schools build new schools, oftentimes they'll have to shut down their own facility for a number of years. And I know in our neck of the woods, we're all pretty friendly to a degree of, I look at West Bridgewater, for example, when they were building their school, they exclusively used Bridgewater Rainham. So you just need to, again, like Brandon said, be creative, but I think building relationships with fellow ADs will certainly help.
Fantastic. And let's move on to question number 7 here. How do you maximize the signage and sponsorship space of athletic facilities to highlight local businesses and major distributors / sponsors? And Brandon, I think we'll throw it back over to you for this one, because I believe we have some digital video or digital work to kind of go along with it.
Yeah, so I mean, as you can see here, Jesse, if you could flip to the next one, there you go. So if you can see on the left side where it says video wall, we were one of, we take pride about, I think it was four years ago, we take pride in, we were one of the first local schools, in our tri-state in Cincinnati to start this video wall stuff. And now, there's companies specifically that do this. But, instead of maximizing space, like we talked about yesterday, we're kind of digitizing everything. We've all been in gyms with banners, everywhere in the gym. You can barely see the walls. And it's too busy. You can't really focus on anything. So, with the video wall at Roger Bacon, it's the centerpiece of the gym. Whenever there's downtime, we have ads that continuously loop, during action and all that. But, when there's timeouts, or at the end of a volleyball game, when, they get the 3-minute break, we play live commercials with sound. Some of them even have our own kids in them. We've had a car wash that they took and they got the Spartan mascot and made it on there on an iPhone. So like you said, with maximizing everything, I think it's all, if you centralize it and digitize it, it just makes it more, visible for everybody rather than having banners and all that stuff everywhere in the gym.
And Peter, you had mentioned right off the top there with, kind of spearheading that $300,000, scoreboard renovation for DeKalb there. What was your experience of kind of maximizing that signage and sponsorship space?
Well, and just because like what he said, you go into a lot of gyms and you can't see really anything because they have banners all over the place. As you can tell, we have two different boards. One's on the south and one's on the north. The one to the left there, one of our former students fell ill. So we wanted to make sure that, we want to support Bilal, that, to bring attention to that. And that's what that did, and it raised some extra cash for him and his family's struggles. So we're really excited about that. The other one is just another one that really doesn't show the commercials, but basically what those two things do is that it shows, you take those banners off the walls and start showing more of our student athletes and just any type of activity, more of their successes. On one wall, it has all the state trophies that we brought home. Then the other wall right off to the left there, you can see a picture of one of our cheerleaders. We put those up for all the senior athletes. So we try to, basically going through Samsung and Correct Digital Display of putting this up, we are able to start showing more of our student athletes' successes and making money for them and supporting them in causes.
And Scott, to you, what's been your experience, using that signage space for sponsorships?
Yeah, I mean, we really try to focus on, with some larger corporations in our area, is really trying to reach out to some of those. And I was actually just going to share quickly, can you guys see that? Our guide to sponsorship. So we really tried to reach out to our business community, give them our attendance at games, social media, our website demographics. And actually, Peter shared some of these statistics, but just that our businesses understand and realize what their sponsorship means and what it can do for them as a business, I think is really important. So we try to share that information, and then we put packages together for our sponsors, and then we put it all together in one thing. We try to highlight again our kids and put together some sponsorship packages that make sense for our businesses and corporate sponsors throughout the community. So I think that was just one way that we try to really share information with our corporate sponsors and make sure that they know what's available and how it can benefit them.
Awesome. Fantastic. Now, how do we get the most out of our athletic facilities? Maybe this is a little redundant from our previous questions, but when we're talking about the new and improved facilities, do we use that facility for public use? Do you try to get, state tournaments hosting there, AAU games, that sort of thing? And how do you kind of maximize that? And we'll turn it back over to Scott here.
I'd had to unmute here.
There we go.
I think one thing that we've done is we've tried to reach out to our state associations and host some of our larger events in the state. We've got some really nice facilities in the Ankeny community. So we host state cross country for middle school, and we also host state cross country for middle school boys and girls track, which are huge money makers for us.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to utilize that. But also knowing that we can't do that all the time, and the stress on our facilities are at some point there's a give and take, but we really want to make sure that when we do host something that it benefits our student athletes and our school and our community. one thing that I learned actually from Bruce Brown, the Ohio Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Executive Director, he came and spoke a number of years in Iowa, and he said, what's the economic impact that high school athletics plays, in a local community economy? So I actually called the Des Moines Area Chamber of Commerce and actually got some statistics, and actually went and then used that statistic when I reached out to our local businesses. And I said, our athletic program just at Newton was generating about $6 million in revenue for our local community. And they gave us, like a per hour, what a family would spend when they visit our community from outside. And they also gave an overnight trip and what that looked like. So that really helped, just again, foster the goodwill from the school that we were trying to help our community, and also, promote our facilities and try to utilize those facilities.
And now, Peter, you have I believe DeKalb is roughly 2,000 students or so. So I would assume that you have a little bit of a bigger facilities to work with here. So do you have more opportunities to lend out to state tournaments or other out of school events?
Like I referenced earlier, during winter break, we run a 32-team wrestling tournament that takes 2 days, and 32 teams of the lower level one day. And then we run it's the longest running consecutive basketball tournament in state Illinois history, the Chuck Dayton, where it's 16 teams. So we're able to bring in a lot of people to look at our facility. It's a newer facility. And then in turns, people talk. And then we get calls from the state. We host super sectionals out on our, which is like the next game before state for soccer. We've hosted the smaller schools, 1A, 2A super sectional for girls basketball. We host many wrestling regionals, softball, baseball. And then we actually, because we have Northern Illinois University, we do run the 3A, 4A super sectionals at NIU. Our school does. So we are able to do a lot of things with our state and with other tournaments. We run a huge gymnastics tournament, badminton. So there's a lot of things that we can do because we have a great field house and one of the best new gyms that I've seen in quite some time in the state of Illinois, in the Chuck Dayton. So we're very lucky to have the facilities that we have, and with the scoreboards now have just added to that.
And before I go over to Brandon here, just as a follow-up to you two, with if you do have a new facility or in the process of building a new facility or event space, is it beneficial to coordinate with your state athletic association to find out the guidelines for which that would be best to host a state tournament or, an out-of-school event?
Well, they send questionnaires to you each year, and I don't know how they do it in Iowa, but you can sign up. And then through the rotation and things like that, they will assign you. But for the bigger things, super sectionals and sectionals, they send you questionnaires on really everything and make sure you're ADA and all that. The more important things to make sure that the experience is going to be great for everybody.
Is that a similar experience for yourself, Scott?
I would just echo what Peter said. I mean, it's really about the state really will reach out to you for the most part, but we have the same thing. We fill out some questionnaires that the state has for us just on capacity, parking, lighting, things of that nature. So very similar in Illinois.
And then Brandon, coming from a smaller school perspective, what are your facilities like at Roger Bacon, and then how do you maximize that?
So like you said, we're a small school, about 500 kids. We're kind of landlocked with our facilities. We, as much as we can, we branch out, for youth teams to come. We have CYO teams, youth basketball teams that use it during the winter season. And our boys basketball team helps work those. But in terms of, we would love to host, playoff stuff, and we're going to try to do that. But with us being landlocked, typically, especially at our stadium, we probably would be only able to host, smaller division, boys and girls soccer games, which is something we have plans for in the future, especially since we just redid our stadium, parking lot and entrance. But, we got, like with Matthew, we were talking yesterday, we got 17 sports, and now we have 2 club sports that need to use our stadium, and then also, our practice field and our basketball court and volleyball court. So it's really hard to, try to branch out as much as we would like in terms of getting, different outside groups and organizations to use our facilities.
Yeah, and I know with Matt there, Old Colony seems to be on a huge plot of land. How do you utilize that to your advantage?
So it's very similar. I'm in the same boat as Brandon. It is tough to maximize because the facilities are being used by all of our students. We don't have extra fields. We basically have what we need, but we do lend it out to the local AAU and the Populana football. For us, we've seen some great improvements, and thankfully we have a great administration working with me and see the value in athletics. If you guys can believe this or not, we're just putting up lights. So it's a long time coming. We're extremely grateful, but I know that moving forward, we're going to be renting it out to some of the local teams. And what's nice about that for us too is the visibility portion of it. I've had the good fortune of running a summer league basketball program over the years, and I know that for us, getting parents to see the school, how clean it is, how welcoming it is, it's a great community. I think it's a great, a good selling point for us. Absolutely.
Let's talk some tech here. How are we using modern technologies to earn sponsorship revenue? And Brandon, I think we already had a slide prepared for you as well, right? With on social media.
Yeah, so for us, a big thing, we take pride in our social media. We make it very, make it huge to our parents that, social media is a big part of how we promote not only our teams, but our student athletes. We try to do it for every sport. Football is obviously, a huge one, but we that doesn't mean that the boys and girls bowlers don't get, shout outs, and we don't highlight their accomplishments and their games and all that stuff. So, we went with a new platform this year. This is kind of a plug, shout out to Box Out Sports. It's kind of like Gipper, if anybody knows that, but I used to make all of our graphics on Photoshop, and now, with this new platform with Box Out Sports, it can be done in the snap of a finger. There's rooms for advertisers on there as well. An idea I had in the future was to, have one, company or organization or business, they're going to be the social media sponsor for Roger Bacon Athletics for the whole year. And we can use that revenue to pay for the box out stuff. So that's just kind of one idea with the tech side. And we obviously already talked about the video walls and all that stuff, but a huge focus on social media. And then, it's as easy as even, retweeting or favoriting, when, like one of our car sponsorships or one of our car dealerships, Kelsey Chev, when they tweet out something, they got a sweet deal, you get $2,000 back on, whatever, just throw them a retweet. It's just that simple. So that's kind of how we, on the tech side and social media side, how we, partner with our sponsors and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and Scott, speaking of social media, you pulled off a little local NFL network, skill here, I guess, right? Incorporating a red zone aspect into your social media.
Yeah, so while I was at Newton, we got Hy-Vee to sponsor Red Zone. So you see Mr. Jarvis sprinting down the sideline, trying to get down the field when one of our football team gets in within the 20, and we start, Twitter Live, and we try to get that excitement of scoring a touchdown, and then again, tweet our sponsors. We utilize that a lot. Again, social media space, I think, is just going to become more and more of a place where we can, as athletic directors, generate revenue. Whether that's, we really tried to use some fan engagement apps to try to get our kids involved. So we'll use our fan engagement app to tell everybody, hey, it's beach night at the football game, or it's USA night. And then we'll also use that fan engagement app. There's capabilities in there. You can put a geofence around where that is. So if it's a business, we've worked out, arrangements with, different companies that if somebody comes, they're going to give us $1 for everybody who shows up to Culver's on a Friday night after a football game. But kids can earn points through that fan engagement app. And that was a huge success, and really tried to drag kids to games. I know that one thing that when I received my job here at Ankeny was really trying to engage our kids and try to get them back to the games and try to get them involved and get them excited about coming to athletic events. So we really utilize that. But as you can see from the thing here, again, just trying to promote our sponsorships and what we offer, whether that's through social media. One of the other things we do is we utilize our Central Iowa Sports Network, and I was able to sell sponsorships for pregame, starting lineup, halftime show, and postgame show. We're really able to get a lot of revenue from that. We also have put in coupons on our social media for after games to try to get people. We've even worked with some of our local vendors on staying open a little bit later on a Friday night after a football game or a basketball game, and trying to get people to attend there. And then one thing that we did with Dick's Sporting Goods while I was up in Minneapolis is we did a Blaze Shop Day. So basically they gave us a kickback on anything that was purchased that day. We printed out those coupons and, we just sat back and collected the money. And I think on that one, we raised about $6,000 or $7,000. And really, we just handed the coupons out. And we tried to do that before the season started. So we tried to incorporate our youth clubs and all of our travel organizations along in those shop days to help generate revenue for our athletic department.
See, I see everything that you're doing with these red zone videos and selling sponsorships of that. And I've had the pleasure of attending a couple of, Matt's high school varsity basketball games at Old Colony there. And if you've ever had the opportunity to go see them doing the pregame announcements, the roster lineups and the roster announcements and sort of thing, I think that's a great opportunity for Matt to utilize as a space to kind of sell some advertising sponsorship space of their starting rosters announcements. So that's a little tip I might have for you there, because that's really one of the better things I've seen recently in covering high school sports in Massachusetts.
I agree. I mean, it's so funny because, I'm always on my phone and I love social media, and my wife will turn and say to me, "You're on your phone again. You're on your phone." But you're constantly, like you say, you're constantly selling your product and trying to put your students in the best light you possibly can. You just referenced one of the favorite things that we do, and that's highlighting our students prior to games. Shutting out all the lights, putting a spotlight on them, put them on the biggest stage you can. We've created, whiteout games, blackout games, like Peter had mentioned, you've got beach night and whatnot. When you put those sort of things on social media, ultimately it brings students and parents in because they want to see it. It's more than just a game. It's an event. One of the other things that we had great success with, and we put it out on social media, was that, we were playing in a big football game and we offered end zone seating to a degree of, we had people serving hot dogs and hamburgers, and you had the best seat in the house. But that was all spearheaded through our social media account.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Peter, as a maybe a follow-up question here, in some of the digital equipment, kind of going back to a previous question, we have this from a guest here. What kind of ROI do you find yourself getting out of going with digital equipment? Is that high or low as far as return of investment?
Explain to me what ROI is real quick.
Well, I understand that as return on investment.
Return on investment. Okay, that's what I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
But real quick, to go along with the digital, we have, and I heard him say box out, and we work with a company that I think works with box out, is Varsity News Network, VNN, and that's what our website is. And they do, and the guy that I deal with, Alex, out of Milwaukee, it's just unbelievable all the stuff that you can get sent out with that website, sending up updates all the time. Just really good. That's a great website to check out and to use, because they do an excellent job of pushing out everything with key maps and all that. As far as our return on investment, like I said, we're going to have that thing, paid off hopefully this year. So then we're looking, the Booster Club and my office are going to split up. We're looking at $50,000 each year. So we're, it's limited as what we can do with the money that we get, because we're going to split that 50-50. And then, those uniforms that you have to sell candles and all that for, we don't need to do that. And like I said again, is that the Booster Club can then start giving our student athletes teams the nice things they have. And I can take care of the things that they have to have in the school district. So it's pretty much the school district gives us our budgeting is the things that they have to have. Then I can give them those nice things, and then the Booster Club can give those Cadillac things. So that's where our return on our investment is going to pay off. I would say, this is the second year with it. We really weren't able to do anything with our boards. The only people that really was able to use the boards this year was basketball, both boys and girls, and wrestling. And and a little bit of badminton and things like that. But we're looking at big things here. And like I had to raise $80,000 in a month and a half to get the down payment for it. And that's probably one of the biggest things that they've ever, one single thing to do that. So we think it's a very good, and Samsung does a great job, along with my local guy, David Scott out of Correct Digital Display, who the service is outstanding, and the work with Samsung was just out of this world.
Hey, can I ask a quick question, Wesley?
Please.
Peter, did you use an outside agency to go out and get those ads for your Samsung board, or did you do that within your booster club?
I did that. We did that together within our booster club, because those type of deals that you have don't, it's a 60,000, but it's going to cost you 130,000 to get that. So you want to do it on your own, because then it's going directly into your student athletes account and things like that to help. So that's our Scoreboard. IV, Big Iowa, Fatty's is a local restaurant, MetroNet is internet. We're playing Naperville Central. It really, and the top three things just keep revolving all the time. Of course, the bigger package is the middle with Hy-Vee, with Northwestern Medical, and our DeKalb Sycamore Chevrolet dealership. So those are anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 to get onto the 25,000 to get onto those things.
Fantastic. And Peter, we're going to stay with you on this question here on the topic of fundraising events. How do you figure out what fundraising events will work best for your community? And then as a follow-up, in regards to your scoreboard here, how do you convince the administration board of the multiple uses for the scoreboard?
Well, when I went in front of the scoreboard, or when I went in front of our school board, and I looked at them and I said, the school district is not going to have to pay a penny. Where can we sign? And we're going to try to generate, after we get it paid off, close to $100,000 a year that we don't have to take out of our coffers to help pay, to where we can get those nice things. And really, like I said, our conference, our school now with 2,000 is the smallest conference in our conference by almost 1,800 kids.
Wow. And
when those people come out to here, they're like, they don't think anything west of Aurora is Iowa. So when they come out of 88 and come out to DeKalb, they're just floored by our great facility and all the nice things that we have out here. And the first thing the kids do when they walk in and they see those boards, they're like, holy smokes. And another thing that it's when we sold it to the administration is now that we're going to, we have students already making warm-up videos. And we're going to start, they're going to start having that media class. So they can start doing bigger and better things, and we can start using it for classes as well in there. And we do we do a lot of things with our pep assemblies with the board. So it's just very, there's no limit to what we can do and the avenues that we're opening up for our students, and not our student athletes, but our students.
And Scott, in your experience out in Iowa, what fundraising events do you think work best for your community?
I think the big thing is just reaching out to your community. One thing that we did was we reached out to our business community. We just had some focus groups and asked them, how do you want to be approached? What kind of things are you, interested in sponsoring? What kind of things? So we got some really great feedback from local businesses, and it actually turned out really well. So we were able to foster a little deeper connection and really try to focus in on what they needed and what they wanted. There was some tough conversations had, but in the end, I thought it worked out really well, and that it's helped us in the long run to increase some of our sponsorships that were maybe only 500 to 1,000 and increase those significantly just by listening and reaching out.
And Matt, in the Bay State, what have your experiences been like?
Well, Wes, I think that you really need to know your market and who you're working with. I've had the good fortune. I actually live in one of the communities that sends to our school, so I get to see it firsthand. But really, for us, I think that interacting with the kids. We mentioned earlier that a number of years ago, I started with the coaches that Leadership Council, and we talk about a myriad of things around athletics. But when we do talk about fundraising, they come up with some of the best ideas. So I think that they know probably better than the rest of us old timers what's going to work best and what's going to sell.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And speaking of those young guns, Brandon, you have any big ideas coming out of there?
Nothing off the top of my head right now. I mean, we're always going, trying to do some new stuff and all that. But to go back on the question, I think a lot of it, unfortunately, it can be trial and error sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I always recommend, and I learned this from my boss, is reach out to your colleagues. We're in a conference with 8 ADs for every sport but football, and then for football we're in another conference with I think about 12 schools. So there's about 20 ADs that we work closely together with all year. And it's just one of those things, everybody's here for each other. Some of the best ideas we've ever had, I've taken from, high schools from, like in Iowa or anywhere, even small colleges. So it's kind of just, reaching out to everybody, figuring out trial and error, what works best for your school and all that kind of stuff.
And before moving forward with our final 2 questions, we do have another audience question here from Steve Rossi. Do any of your schools have a development/fundraising arm outside of athletics, maybe to aid or to offer guidance in any type of fundraising situations?
I do not currently have that. When I was out in Seattle at a private institution, we did have a development. So it was really important for us to be on the same page and we didn't step on each other's toes, which sometimes can be a problem. So I guess it's really nice if you have that and just utilizing their skill set with the development department. But I'm not lucky enough to have that here in Iowa.
Anyone else lucky enough to have an out of athletics fundraising arm?
Well, we do, but first off, that's my boss. That's our athletic director at Roger Bacon, Steve Ross. For him, he knows the answer, but for everybody tuned in and for Matt, Peter, and Scott, we do have a development office. It's kind of that's where our president is. We have fundraising officers in there, and it's kind of in the middle of a revamp. We want to revamp how we do with the development. But one thing that Steve and myself have done a good job of is, if you are lucky enough to have a development office, it's kind of important that them and athletics work together. If we have a sponsor that's paying $2,000 a year in athletics, we don't hide that from the development office, because the last thing we want is them calling somebody and asking for a $200 donation, and with them not knowing, hey, we already gave $2,000. That could create some a stir that we don't want to. So we do a good job communicating with the development office on what's going on in athletics, and then they do the same for us as well.
Great. So he's making sure you're staying on your toes there, right?
Yeah, he's making sure.
Yeah. So obviously now with the current COVID-19 pandemic that's sweeping the nation, schools I would imagine are facing budget cuts to some degrees or varying degrees. So how do you appropriately advocate for your budget to remain the same, or perhaps maybe even request an increased budget in times where money is getting spread thin? And we'll start with Peter on that. Excuse me.
Well, basically what we have done is that we've kind of saved money because nothing was spent in the spring, much with paying workers and paying officials. But moving forward, I mean, we have to be ready because you just don't know what's going to happen. With the the state of Illinois, they're going up to phase 4 in the Reopen Illinois, and that's where businesses are going to start, where you can go inside and start eating and things like that. So I think we're one of the last people in the United States to open our doors up, so to speak. But we just need to be ready. And I think that, we really haven't talked much about what we're going to do, but, a lot of things are on hold, but I think it's important. And I've talked with our education center saying, hey, you know what, it's starting to trend to look. We have a meeting on this Thursday to discuss more. So, you know, I think that we're going to be all right, but I think everything stays same. But like I said, this will be year 2 of us going into a bigger conference where they have more people and have more coaches. And we've even added 2 or 3 coaches, and we're going to have to add some more. So we're going to have to do some real looking at our numbers to make sure that we stay up with the Joneses, so to speak.
Sure. And I know in Massachusetts, just like Peter was saying about Illinois kind of being one of the last states to open up, I think that's safe to say with Massachusetts as well, especially if you're looking to, golf courses. I believe they were the last state to open up. But in Massachusetts, how do you advocate, for your financial budget, Matt?
For me, I'm very fortunate that, my superintendent and principal are both former coaches. So they understand the value of, educational athletics and what we do for students. For us, I don't want to say we're planning for the worst, but I do know that, we're waiting for that state budget to come out, and what is that going to look like? So, we've pre-purchased, like others have mentioned, we're in a situation where we didn't spend X amount of dollars this past spring. So we're pre-purchasing for the fall and later on in the fiscal year for next year. So much so that, I've basically ordered everything that I need, and as far as advocating for more, that's really not a reality. I think we have to make do with what we have and do the best that we can. I've put an approach together for the administration in relation to 3 tiers, and that's to maximize the opportunities for all of our student athletes and not see a major difference if there is a budget cut. So it might be something along the lines of, you may play a couple less games per se, or there might be a few less bus trips, but we're trying to, eliminate the impact to our student athletes.
And Scott, what's been your experience in Iowa?
I don't know that we'll see a budget crunch this year, but I think the following year will be where it really hits most athletic departments. But I go back, and Peter and Matt have already mentioned it, but just having a budget plan will be really important. Having your uniform rotations, make sure those are set. And then I work with our coaches each year, and basically what they do is like, here's what I need, here's what I want, and here's my dreams. And I have them submit that every January. And then we work through our budget basically until about spring break. And then we kind of release that to our coaches. And it's worked thus far. But in our situation, again, the only money the school would see a budget savings on would be cutting coaches and cutting transportation. So it's just going to be more important for us more than ever to really focus our fundraising efforts to make sure that we do not lose opportunities for our student athletes.
Yeah, and Brandon, to put a bow on this question here, where are you guys at Roger Bacon as far as the that process?
So for obviously with budget cuts, we're a small private school, so we don't have a district meeting that says, hey, here's your budget for the year. Obviously, we still do have a budget, and stuff earmarked for athletics and all that. Like Matt touched on, our principal is a huge supporter of athletics, and that any high school, that's so vital to have, because he trusts us. He gives us resources that we need, in order to make our kids and our fans, have a great time, great high school experience. So in terms of budget cuts for the upcoming year, we really don't foresee a lot of that. I think one thing for us at Bacon, we try to spend our money wisely. We every time we're making an improvement. For an example, when we redid our stadium, we needed 2 big pool barns to put just storage. So when the initial architect brought us something, I think they wanted to build a brick building, and it was going to be about $120,000 per. And we kind of all met, and it's kind of like, why do these need to be brick buildings if we're just going to store goals and flagpoles in them? Why don't we look at another avenue? So we went and looked at it, and we got 2 pool barns that I believe were about $20,000 a piece. So I think overall the bigger picture is just we're always and I'm sure everybody else is as well, just very smart how you spend your dollars, especially with us, since a lot of our dollars are all donated. With our investors and our donors who are more than generous, it's important to show them that we're not wasting money per se, and we're using it the right way.
Absolutely. Matt, to finish. Oh, nope. I apologize. I was the bow on the question. Question number 12 here. How many is too many when it comes to those involved? We touched on this a little bit with our Q&A question from the audience. I think with that outside of athletics, fundraising arm. But is it better to have too many cooks in the kitchen or too little? And then Matt, I'll turn it over to you now.
Yeah, so I think that's all in how you're wired. I mean, for me, I prefer to work in small groups. I wouldn't call myself atypical, but I am, obviously detail oriented, and I'm pretty hands on. So it's interesting, working in a vocational school. The instructors and the kids are not afraid to get their hands dirty. So that we oftentimes we get a lot of people who will jump on board, and then it becomes overwhelming. And you're moving in all kinds of different directions. I find it better to work in small groups. You can, be pretty concise in what you're trying to accomplish, manage the task, and then maximize, the efforts of people around you. So for us, I think that, some of the best fundraisers have been done through small groups, opposed to a larger population.
Absolutely. And maybe forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn here, but I think sometimes if you have a whole lot of people, the overall message or the goal can get muddied. The more people you have, and maybe that's just my opinion, but maybe Peter, do you agree or have a different thought on that?
Well, really what we went to when we did this, I was basically the voice, and I went out, talked to everybody to make sure that the voice was the same. We did reach out to our coaches and say, hey, if you can get me in front of somebody, and you know what, you get 50% of what we bring in, just so that, so the message doesn't get lost. And here at DeKalb, we have Northern Illinois University here as well, and they have to do it. So we kind of, we have to be careful on how many people get hit all the time. So that's one thing that we're trying to do with this board. So we take away the door-to-door sales and stuff like that, is that we make sure that we are not stepping on everyone's toes. So that's what we've really tried to concentrate here, and make sure that we keep it to like what Matt says. In our booster club, we have different groups, that there's a leader and then you go to that person. So those are the types of things that we do. I don't know if I'm atypical. I have no idea. I just go out and go. So that's what I like to do. Throw 1,000 ideas on the board, and which one sticks, and then we roll with it.
And Brandon, how about for yourself?
So for us, like you said, you don't want any message or anything to get muddy. My boss and myself work really well together, and we really like the small group, kind of aspect of things. That way it just doesn't get lost either. And, again, like I reiterated last time, you don't want somebody asking for $200, when they just wrote a check for $2,000 to the athletic department. For instance, our booster organization is one guy. We have a booster president, and he's kind of the treasurer. But what we do, me, Steve, and, Mark, we work together. Like I said, boosters pays for all of our uniforms and huddle. We have a rotation. So, it's 3 to 4 years for uniforms. Again, keeping it small and all that, there's no opportunity for somebody else to come in and say, hey, I donated this much money. My daughter plays girls tennis. We got to get girls tennis uniforms. So, we find it very vital and important to keep that kind of close and, in between our walls, you could say. All
right, Scott, bat and cleanup man here.
Yeah, that never happened when I played baseball. I think the big thing to think about, and Matt and Peter and Brandon have touched on it, is within your booster club organization, make sure you have a fundraising arm, make sure you have a concessions arm, and then within that, they'll have a leader of each of those groups, and then they'll have a committee of people that'll help them. But one thing I would just add to what everybody said, and when you do have like a certain fundraiser coming out, I think it's just important to be strategic on who you bring in. We just did a fundraiser this spring, which unfortunately got canceled because of COVID. But I was very strategic in bringing people on. I brought in some people that were some marketing people from, Principal Financial. I brought in a couple people that would have some good connections within the community to get the word out on our event. So I think sometimes it's important to, as an AD, just be strategic and try to bring in people that are going to make that event be as successful as possible.
That is fantastic. And with that, that wraps up our questions. So I want to thank our panelists, Matt, Scott, Brandon, and Peter for the knowledge and ideas that they brought to the table today. So I also want to thank our sponsor, Samsung LED Display. And I'd like to, pardon me for a moment here, I'd like to turn this over to Ian White, the Samsung team, for a brief word about their technologies that help schools generate revenue and protect all those involved in sports. And I'm not Ron Burgundy.
Hey, thank you. I want to first thank Coach and Athletic Director Magazine for this opportunity for us to be involved here at Samsung, but also our panelists. They did a great job. I think I saw some comments and everyone's giving you a great round of applause. Thank you, Peter, Scott, Matt, and Brandon. So Samsung is a brand and a name that everybody recognizes being one of the strongest brands in the world. But aside from, the stuff that most people are familiar with, the mobile computing devices, the wearables, we are the world leader in digital display technology, and that goes beyond your living room, and it goes to the LED displays, which you've been able to see some with Peter sharing at DeKalb High School as well.
That is fantastic. So thank you so much, Ian and Samsung, for making this panel happen. And thank you for spending all this time learning through these excellent panelists that we had today. We're having this recording on this panel available on demand very soon. So watch for that email letting you know when it's available, and keep your eyes out for future webinars and panel discussions through Coach and AD Magazine. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.